Hello and welcome to Wallas Toy Reviews, where I, Wallace the Polish Toy Guy, take a look at toys, figures and model kits from all over the world that catch my eye. Today I want to show you a transforming robot action figure from 2010 by Hasbro. This is Transformers Reveal the Shield Deluxe Special Ops Jazz. Autobot Jazz was one of the very first classic Transformers created for the franchise back in the 80s, and pretty much from the day I first heard of him, he became my favorite classic Autobot. There's this combination of his personality and his alt modes. Personality because he is always optimistic, interested in everything that's around him, especially human culture, and the fact that being special ops specialist, he's very hard to defeat in combat, and he also transforms usually into very nice white sports cars. So for me, there's nothing not to like about this character, and as a result, once in a while I try to get a hold of a new toy of this version of Jazz, though once in a while I don't mind getting other versions, as you can see, and I hope to get more in the future. To start the proper review, let's first take a look at Jazz's vehicle mode, which, like I said, per tradition is a nice white sports car with some extra details. Now, in the original series, Jazz transformed into Porsche 935 Turbo, but Hasbro and Takara did not have license for that car at the time of this toy's creation, so instead it's a somewhat Porsche-inspired toy with some bits of the movie Pontiac Solstice, but still with this amalgamation, license or not, this is a nice looking car, with some very characteristic Jazz elements of these blue and red strips, in some places this very characteristic number 4 in few places. And the plastic quality is nice. It may not be the heaviest deluxe class I've seen, but it seems pretty sturdy. And the plastic is a combination of this white, pearly white injected, as well as clear plastic for the windscreen with blue tint painted over as to not have a full body sunroof. Though I suppose I would like to see some more paint on the back, because if you look at the front, yes, we have clear headlights, nice grille details, and also this bit on the bumper. We have the start of the Jazz strip, but on the back, nothing, and this is kind of sad because we can see the details of the tail lights, exhaust pipes, spoiler, back bumper, and from what I can tell the Japanese version has these areas covered with paint, but in USA, in Europe, this toy costed less, so had smaller paint budget, and it shows, and it will show especially in robot mode. I mean, yeah, it's okay right now, but it always could have been better. And also, typical for the American releases, we have simple plastic wheels with no painted hubcaps, though they do roll on the floor quite nice, as despite the fact that we can see some robot bits protruding from the bottom, they do not outgo the wheels, so the rolling is quite nice. The spoiler also moves a bit, mostly for the transformation, and seeing that this is Reveal the Shield line, we have a thermographic rub sign on the roof, so we press it. It was black before, but after the soft touch of my warm finger, it's still black, which means it has to get some time to warm up. Come on, come on, come on. There we go. It was fun to look in Generation 1, it's fun to look at right now. So, gimmick-wise, well, we've already covered that, but there's one more thing you can do with Jazz while he's still on 4 wheels. You can open up his doors, and if we look behind them, we have these elements, we can fold them out like this, use their multi-joint platforms, and we can manipulate them further to give Jazz nicely painted speakers, which he sometimes used in the original cartoon for sonic attacks. And I admit the amount of movable parts to which these speakers connect is almost ridiculous for such a small area. But the plus side is that you have a lot of freedom in how you set them up. You can have them like this with open doors, which is kind of nice, or using all of these joints you can also set this up while the doors are closed. So whichever you prefer is the one that's going to work, and that's nice. So I think that's all for the vehicle mode. I find it overall nice, even though its main function is probably looking nice, but still I like what it is. So with that said, let's start vehicle mode comparisons before we go to the transformation. And the first set of comparisons will be for movie-themed toys of Deluxe-class. So here we have two toys from the last night. The first reused Deluxe of Bumblebee, made from the Age of Extinction version, as well as a brand new Barricade. And for something G1 themed, here we have Titan's Return Deluxe Chrome Dome, and something I would usually try to call Titan's Return Deluxe Sergeant Cup, but I did not like the American version, so instead I opted for the Transformers Legends Japanese Target Master Cup. And for G1 Masterpiece, here we have Sideswipe and Smokescreen, and unfortunately at the time of this recording, Jazz does not have an official Masterpiece toy. Takara Tomy did not have the license from Porsche to create a MP Jazz, which is sad, and as a result I think I'm going to pick up a third-party Masterpiece-like version of this guy soon, though that will probably not stop me from getting the official version as well if it ever is created. And with that said and done, it's time to transform Jazz into his robot mode, and the way I think I want to do things is, in this video I will show you how to change him from vehicle to robot mode, but I will also create a separate video in which I show how to transform him from robot to vehicle, so both ways have been shown some way on my channel. So let's start with opening his doors, which act as clamps that connect both sides of this toy, and by that I mean you have the liberty of selecting whether you want to transform the legs or the front first. I usually start with the legs, which I have to stretch out to separate them from the roof, and I really like how tightly packed these are. So first I use the knee hinges to get this up a bit to make the separation easier. And it's done. And now we can push the legs forward, and it's time to straight out the knees a bit. We can also lift the spoiler up a bit to make things easier, and I also highly recommend at this point get the feet from the vehicle mode position, both front and back. This is going to be very important once we start dealing with these bits, because they tend to get jammed with the heels. So now that that's done, we can reveal this unconspicuous hinge, and as you can see there are spring-loaded bits that will straighten out with this black panel as this goes up. And like I said, sometimes these bits can hook to the heels if you're not careful, but while this happened in the Polish version of this review, we are now avoiding this issue here, so good job on that for me. And with that, the legs are done, and now we can go to the top. And over here we first want to separate the roof and front windscreen from the front of the car if it hasn't happened on its own already. So a simple push and it's done. So now let's go to the undercarriage where we can pull out the arms, and honestly it matters not in which position they are as long as the elbows are facing sideways. It doesn't matter if the front or the left side is here or the right side, both ways will work for the vehicle mode. And with them out of the way, we can also remove the gun, which I should have done at the very beginning of this, but it's still something I can remedy right now. So with this clearance, we can now get our hands on the front four and push it down, and this will start separating both the arms and the shoulder guards. So we can also get these below the wheels. And as you can see, one is teething into the other, and with a proper push, this is out of the way. And now here's a bit of automorph for this toy. If we start to push the front down, the head will go up through this clearance we've just made. Like this. It looks quite fun, though I will talk about this while we are in a robot mode later. So it goes all the way down. And now all we have to do is to just position the arms the proper way, spin this around so that these guards are outside. Like this, like this. Finally, we separate the legs. And with that said, Jazz is now in his robot mode. And in my opinion, the first impression of Jazz's robot mode is very positive. The best thing about it is that if you know Generation 1, you instantly know this is Jazz, which I really do appreciate. The color scheme, the overall shapes, the smaller details, the head, everything shouts Jazz. And that is great. We'll take a look at the details in a moment, but for now you can see this is a very humanoid robot mode and also quite clean. There's really hardly anything over here that is not part of Jazz's overall archetype. The roof on the back, these elements of the car's rear, below knees. Well, the door, depending on which version of G1 Jazz you are looking at, but yes, still, this is definitely Generation 1 Jazz from afar and from up close. And from up close, we can see that first, let's look at the head. This is a nice Jazz head. These antenna spike-like things, the clear visor, these cheek details, everything is very jazzy. Though I'm not so sure about this grimace. I would definitely prefer this toy to be smiling as it is fitting for Jazz. But yeah, it's Jazz, but Jazz is usually quite enthusiastic and optimistic for me. So a minor nitpick. Also, he has light piping. Depending on how you aim the light at the back of his head, he can really shine. And that's nice. Looking below, we can see some characteristic Jazz details. I never knew what this was supposed to be. Was this supposed to be some radio dials or something? I don't know, but it's there. Although sadly it's not painted, and like I said, overall, let's stop for a second and talk about that. This toy in robot mode has absolutely no new paint aside from the head. Everything went to the alt mode, so I suppose this was created in the era where paint applications began to be luxury. And I suppose molding with the proper lighting somehow makes up for this, but still, I would prefer this toy to have some more paint applications in some critical places. Nothing I can't live without, but something I would definitely live with if it was there. And below that we have also characteristic Jazz details here on his hips, also on his shins, very characteristic, and this imitates some of the stickers he has. And as you can see with this toy, like with many modern Transformers, the standard pose of the toy is small spread. I sometimes wonder if this is a good idea or not, but I guess for Jazz it works. Also arms, very characteristic forearms, some nice hand details, and nothing all that interesting on the back. We can see some hollow bits, but that's to be expected of modern toys. But again, nothing exciting, but also nothing horrifying, so I guess we still ended up with this better option. So yes, in terms of visual design, I really like this toy and I like to look at it when I pass its shelf. And to accompany the good looks, Jazz also sports a nice range of motion for a Deluxe from 8 years before. Let's start with the head, which is on the ball joint, so Jazz can look down, up, tilt his head to the sides gently, as well as spin it freely in a full circle, so if you want you can make an Exorcist tribute, and Jazz would be probably the only Autobot who would actually point out this connection, so that's nice. We have also shoulders, which are on a separate hinge due to the transformation, actually 2 hinges, and the main shoulder unit is on a ball joint, so the arm can stretch out to the side quite far, to the front and to the back. That depends on how you deal with the wheel shoulder guards and the doors. Actually, with the doors you can do something somehow. With the wheels, not so much. But it's okay. We have also a bicep swivel, and something I think is just a good nod from the designers, a double jointed elbow. They really did not need to include this, seeing how this transforms, but it's there. With a bit of manipulation you can have a really nice bend over 90 degrees. And also a bit of bend to the other side if that's what you need. We have also waist swivel, which is slightly hindered by the roof unless you use its double hinge connection to get it out of the way. And for the hips we have a very nice kick forward, a very decent kick back. You can slightly adjust it with the roof. Again, we have thigh swivel to the sides. We have a double jointed knee for the transformation, so again, very good bend. Also, not the way that I usually associate with humanoid entities. And due to the transformation we have also some movement in the feet, but nothing spectacular. Still, all things considered, this is a very nice range of motion for a Deluxe-class toy. Though the topic of posability brings me to my main issue with the robot mode, and that is, well, this is not a super solid mode. You can see if you leave it alone, it stays like it should be, yes, but if you start to fiddle with the toy, you can see that not everything that should connects to its destination point, as the arms hinted. And also I think this is the standard intended position for the arms, but I just like these wheels angled a bit. But in my opinion that's nothing compared to the main offender, that is the torso, which does not lock down once it finishes its bits of the transformation. So if you just accidentally push this up, it will detransform rather easily, which is really sad because it's also the easiest thing to mistransform in this toy, and I just find it somehow disturbing that this is not staying in place. Well, yes, there's this bit of friction that keeps it in place most of the times, but the fact that I can manually displace it so easily is something I don't like. And also I'm not really sure what to think about this. I kind of wish that the knees would also somehow lock into place once in the robot mode. Right now this all depends on the friction in this bit. And of course this is not something that definitely destroys this Deluxe in my eyes, but it would really be great if more parts of Jazz would lock down after transformation. And with that nitpick out of the way, it's time for the gimmicks. So let's start with Jazz's own weapon, the gun that we've seen in vehicle mode as it was behind the front. It's folded right now, so all we have to do is to move forward the barrel that was on a double hinge, and now Jazz has a small but nice handgun. And the gun fits snugly into Jazz's hands, which, if I haven't mentioned already, are on ball joints. which is great, and also have 5mm holes in them, so they will accept the vast majority of modern Transformers weapons. And the gimmick of folding out speaker units also returns for robot mode, and again, because it has so many joints in it, you can pose these speakers in pretty much any way you want without any of them being more correct than the other, and their final position depending only on your preference, which this toy gives a lot of free room for. And what is also interesting, these speakers are installed on the C-clips that became a thing somewhere around the time of this toy's release. So you can remove this, and if you look carefully at the barrel of Jazz's handgun, you can see C-clip ports on the sides, and you know what that means. You can combine the speakers with the handgun to create a super gun, and the speakers both lock into place, and they do have some sort of exhaust details on the sides, so I guess that works as an improved gun. And for some reason this shape also reminds me of high energy weapons, for example the main gun from the Super Dimension Fortress Macross. But you know, this is Jazz, so the idea of him attaching actual speakers to his gun to play his favorite song while shooting his enemies also works in my head. And I suppose you can enter Jazz into Rambo mode, but seeing the total amount of his connection points, it's not all that impressive, but then again, I never expected it to be. And I think we can now safely go to robot mode comparisons, so again let's start with movie toys. So here we have the very first deluxe version of Barricade, and the fairly recent Studio Series Deluxe Bumblebee, and we will get to his topic in the future. And for G1 inspired toys, here we have Universe Deluxe Prowl and Universe Deluxe Sideswipe. And for MPG1 toys, here we have Prowl and Wheeljack, and I hope I will live long enough to see an official Masterpiece Jazz so he can join my MP ranks. I am looking forward to that day, and until that happens, which I don't know if it will be soon or very far in the future, I think I'll pick up something from the increasing amount of unofficial Jazzes. And here we also have some other Jazz toys. So, the first Deluxe from the movie and the Deluxe from Animated. And finally, for real-life objects, here we have the common cola can and $1 bill. So overall, I really like this toy. It definitely has more good sides than bad ones, and the good one, for one, is that this is Jazz, one of my very favorite characters, which on its own is a selling point for me. But even character aside, this toy has great looks in both modes. The transformation is simple but very efficient, has lots of posability, so overall this is a great toy to put on your shelf and to play with and pose it for action scenes. Things I don't like, it could have more paint applications, especially in robot mode, and in robot mode more things could lock up to have a more secure robot mode. But aside from that, I think this toy is really great, and I think it can be enjoyed both by fans of Jazz and Generation 1 as a whole, and just by people who like good toys that transform from cars to robots. So if you can get your hands on this toy, I highly recommend that you do. And that's all for this video review. I will be back with the next one soon, and until then, stay well. Polish Toy Guy signing out.